Hey, everybody. I'm live. This is a new place to be live in. I'm in a home now. I am in a townhome and I'm live and I got this cool thing behind me, a sound dampener. So I've got upgrades. There's a bed behind here because I'm in a bedroom. So it looks like I'm kind of in a studio. It's a little dark, but I'll work on it. Okay. So I am settled and doing stuff now. And before I get into my interview, I want to talk about my new sponsor, HelloFresh. So, HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit, and you can get up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts if you go to hellofresh.com/BTB16 and use the code BTB16 when you check out. And they were nice enough to send me some free meals to eat, and I cooked them. And Lisa and I liked them, so it was a win-win. I hope that you get in there and do the same thing. One of the problems we have is that there's just two of us, and buying groceries, all the portions are for like 4 or 5 people. So doing this, there's less waste, and we are spending less at the grocery store. So go to hellofresh.com/BTB16 and use the code BTB16 to get some free stuffs, up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. I don't know what the gifts are because they didn't give me gifts. I just gave me meals, but I'm sure they're great. And that's all I'm going to talk about that. Let's bring out my guest today. It is my buddy Dean Jernigan.
How you doing,
Hi,
Scott?
Dean. I got to
How you doing?
say, this is the first time I've had a close personal friend on the show, and I'm stoked to talk to you because A, I miss you, and
Mhm.
B, you've been doing some really great stuff, so I want to hear all about it and just take in the fact that you are working so hard to be the best comedian you can be.
Yeah, it's aging me early.
Of
I
course.
jokingly say I started doing this. I started doing this when I turned 40, and I'm 43 now. Um, and I've spent more time sleeping in my car since I started comedy than the previous 40 years combined.
Yeah.
So, I'm really hitting my stride.
Yeah. So I really can't do this without telling a couple stories that are a couple of my favorite stories to tell. So we were both I met you at the Drop Comedy Club in its original location by the jail. And you were
Right
just kind of
across the
sitting
street.
there. You were sitting there talking to other comics and I mean, you're a gregarious guy. You're an outgoing guy. So you were talking to people. And for some reason, I just didn't trust you. And you were talking to some people about your van outside. And I'm like, what is this guy trying to do? Kidnap somebody? So I was ready to go at you because I thought you were going to hurt one of my little comedy
Yeah,
friends.
yeah, I had a radio show, and it was actually I think my first night up there,
Yeah.
and I did not know what attention whores we were as comedians because I hadn't been in the scene long enough yet, so I didn't think anybody would come on the radio show unless like they had a little bit of respect for me as a comic. So I
Yeah.
thought I had to go up there and prove myself before I could get them to come on. And fortunately enough, you were actually one of my first guests.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, at
And
gunpoint.
I mean, I was I became a more trusting person real quick. I mean, it was just that thing. I'm always looking for the predator in somebody, and it
Yeah,
turned out you weren't that. But I just thought that was hilarious. And then the next thing is, it's great for you, probably not so great for me. But Jeff Webb had actually asked
yeah.
me to do a show at his club in Valparaiso, and it was a benefit for the canines, wasn't it? For the
Yeah.
police canine.
No, that was the second show. That was the second show. It was there was it was like the week before. It was a Friday show. They were doing monthly shows at the time. It wasn't a comedy club per se. Like
Yeah.
once a month they would do a comedy show, and it was on one of those. And then so you were unable to go.
Yeah, but I pegged you first before I told
Yeah.
Jeff, and I said I got somebody that is probably way funnier than me anyway, and I'm gonna hook you guys up. And Jeff was also a little bit worried about me pawning you off on him, and then that turned out to be a great relationship for you guys, I think.
Yeah, no, actually, yeah, it turned out to be we grew into a really great working relationship we have, and a great friendship at this point. But I believe he introduced me that night with the guy I booked couldn't make it, so he sent this guy in instead. Let's hope he doesn't suck. And then he walked off stage. So that was my intro.
And you didn't suck.
I must not, because then he came back and he booked me. So he calls me. So this is a new club. Actually, that show was Dwight Smith, Serena Monet, Michael Cameron, Mike Banks at the time,
Yes.
Cameron Diesel now, and then myself. And after that show is when they decided they were going to rebrand the whole place a comedy club and start having shows every Friday. But they call me. Jeff calls me a couple days later. Hey, can you do a show tonight? And that was the benefit. And I wasn't aware that it was a benefit for canines. And all week I'd been working on this 10-minute drug related bit. And I thought, well, this will be a perfect chance for me to do all that drug related material. And then I show up and there was canines everywhere. And I went ahead and did it though. It was they have a good sense of humor. Police do.
Yeah.
So
yeah. You know how many times I've talked to Jeff since I pawned you off on him?
How many?
0.
Really?
Yeah. And it's probably more my fault than his. I mean, he just totally dropped off social media, and at that point, I didn't keep up with him, and I had enough shit of my own going on. So
well, you moved. So in all fairness, you were see you guys later, know. And you took off, split halfway across the country. But he's a super busy with booking, and he's found in this day and age, being heavily present on social media, you get mobbed by thirsty comics 24/7 that want a stage spot. So I think that's what he's gone underground.
Yeah, he's ducking and running from those guys. Yeah.
I get it from both sides though. Like, I understand as a comic, like I'm always that thirsty guy looking for stages too.
Right. So one of the things I always loved about you, and one of the things I really miss about you, is whenever we would get together and we had some time, we would always talk about comedy and the different things that you were doing and what you're learning and learning from your mistakes and stuff like that. And I've never seen somebody just jump into it with the gusto that you did. Especially, you're a lot younger than me, but for your age, I mean, you were pushing, you were 40 something
40.
when,
I was 40.
Yeah. So, and you really jumped in and you got good quick. You got good enough that, people wanted you on shows quick, and you were doing the driving and sleeping in your car and stuff like that. And I just always appreciated the fact that you put, way more effort into it than I probably ever will. And I just, I really miss those talks because I was kind of living vicariously through you for a while, as far as your growth.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, the thing is, the comedy is one of those things that, nobody can deny it, can deny you from doing it other than you. Like,
Right.
it's a matter, if you want it hard bad enough, you put the work in, and it'll just chip away at it and chip away at it and network and
Mhm.
network and network, and eventually you'll find, you can bust a way to make a living doing it. And
Mhm.
from the moment I walked up on stage that first time, granted I came at it late, so I came at it from a different angle. I've had a lot of practice speaking in meetings, speaking in
Yeah.
front of groups. I came at it late with a lot of life experience behind me, and I don't know that I would have been as successful had I approached it when I was 20, because it was something I wanted to do when I was
Right.
20, and I was too chicken shit to get on stage.
Yeah.
So I was, back then I was fighting in the Golden Gloves, and I was in the Navy at the time, and
Mhm.
I couldn't bring myself to get on stage and do comedy. It just spooked me, and it bothered
Yeah.
me for 20 years. So when I
Mhm.
finally had my opportunity again, well, the opportunity is always there. It's just, you gotta go out there and just take it.
Right. And you came to it with kind of a business acumen too, because you had been, in management for a long time prior to doing it. And I think that one of the things, because I've been, in the business world for a long time myself, and I think one of the things that gives us an advantage is we don't, I guess, get so emotionally invested into our jokes, because we know if something doesn't work for 2 or 3 times, it's never gonna work, so we need to put it away and bring it out when we can make it funny.
Well, that's it. I'm never done writing the thing, you know. So
Yeah.
I've got some jokes that I've had since day one that have metamorphosized many times, and then I've dropped them entirely. Then I've brought them out and stuck them in a different part. You know, there's long versions of it, short versions of it. Just the other night, I was doing one of my oldest jokes, and I riffed a new line right in the middle of it. Works
Mhm.
perfect. You know, now that's going to stay, and that's, countless times that joke has been told over 4 years, and
Uh-huh.
now there's a new line for it. So it's never complete. You know,
Right.
I guess until it's out there on a Netflix special or something. At that point, then I guess it's kind of in stone.
Yeah. That's that is, at that point, you're kinda done with it unless you can make it totally
Yeah.
new.
Right. And lucky me, I have no specials, so I can just keep writing this shit. Right.
Right, right. Now we've, I guess as, a couple friends, we've gone through a lot of, just a lot of shit, that
Mhm.
happened to us. I mean, we lost, a good friend that was, good friends to both of us, and, I don't know how that affected you, but I really couldn't do anything comedy-wise for a long time. I just had no taste for it.
There
And
was
we're talking about Brian Collins, so, if any people that knew him, that's who we're talking about.
Yeah, Brian. That's actually Brian Collins right there.
Yeah.
The um Yeah, when you have somebody. Brian Collins was one of those characters who, unless you were familiar with like our Northern Indiana scene, you didn't know who he was. But among that scene, he was a superstar that really just was the glue for a lot of people, that just kept everybody together. Like, Brian
Mhm.
Collins was one of those driving forces.
Mhm.
So losing him was a huge blow to all of us. I can't tell you how many people I talked to uh, that said, "Man, that guy was like my best friend," and every one of them was telling the truth. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, yeah.
he was just that guy for so many people, and it was really hard. It was we had a bunch of stuff scheduled, and we went and did several shows immediately after, and one aspect it helped because you could get up there and you can kind of get in your zone,
Mhm.
and then do your thing, and then for a little bit of while you just forgot about it. But it was
Mhm.
hard to do it in particular because, like, from day one of my journey in comedy, he was there. So at every mic, the practices, the shows, every triumph, the
Mhm.
bombings, he was a part of so much of it. So it was difficult. I mean, it was, I want to say we did we took like a week off pod, and we might have thrown up an old episode or something. I think we had some backlog that we went ahead and put out, so we didn't do it for a couple of weeks, and then we didn't really address it on the show for a while, and then we ended up having a tribute show for him, just talking about like our struggles, the struggles that we were having getting back on stage. It affected Jason LaFoon a lot too. I mean, it was just something that we were dealing with. It is tough. It's tough to give up, but part of like what we were going through, that's why comedy is important, because people need that. If nothing else, this whole pandemic has shown me how important it is that like comedy keep going and comedy stay active wherever it is, because it is definitely a essential human need, I believe.
Yeah, and it's funny how much Brian got around as everybody's friend, because it was just kind of a thing for us that he would come to trivia night with Lisa and I on Thursday nights at whatever restaurant that was. I don't remember the name of the restaurant, and it wasn't a big deal. But every time I call him and say, "Hey, Brian, we're doing it tonight," he'd just be there, and we'd have a great time. Lisa loved him, and we did better because he knew so much trivia that that we didn't know that we always scored well too.
Well, you couldn't find a better writing partner. If you were struggling over some bit, you could call him up and just be like, "Hey, Brian, like, hey man, you mind if we do some writing?" And boom, he'll drop whatever he's doing, meet up with you, and write. You can and work that bit out right there.
Yeah,
and just find somebody who just make himself available to everybody like that. He was a rare bird entirely, and he was just going way too soon. And the comedy world lost. It was a huge loss with him, and they'll never know it.
Yeah. So I've been watching you from afar, and I see that coming up, you're going to be opening for Bob Goldthwait. Is that right?
You're going to get featured? That was actually it was funny how I kind of locked into that. There was a comedy contest that I was supposed to be part of, but the host got ill. And then so they canceled the contest. So he's like, "Hey, let me throw you some dates to make up for this contest. So would you like to host?" Now I never host. I don't like hosting. I get acid reflux, stress. I freak out. You know me, like I was in the military, so like that's always stuck with me, is like 15 minutes early is on time. So I'm always at the show early. I've always prided myself on like whatever time I'm doing, you don't need to light me. Like I've got that time. That's just something. That's how I've always approached this thing. That's just how I do it. Now, comics come in all shapes and sizes, and punctuality isn't like all their strong suits. And when you're hosting and you're supposed to be running the light and you're keeping track of like, all right, so there's this, where's the next comic? And they'll wander off. Comics are the most some of them are just a handful. So I get stressed out and I get headaches when I'm hosting. So when they asked me to host that thing, I was like, man, like I'm kind of like I'm a baby when it comes like I'm a good host if I don't have to do most, like I can do some time, go the rules, do some time, introduce the people, but I'm not responsible for firing them. I don't need to light them. You know what I mean? Like all of that, the production aspect. So I don't have to stress over it. And they were really easy on me. They were like, all that stuff was handled. So I go there and I do this host, and then after the first time I host that show, they booked me to feature for Bobcat. So pretty stoked about that. That's coming up in a couple of weeks, actually. So
that's cool. So what things
sold out at this point?
Yeah. So, you've been at this for a few years. What things have you learned, and what things have you changed about your writing style or your performing style that you think is working for you? I mean, you're right in the middle of it now, so you're probably pivoting and making changes like almost every set. But what are some main things that you think you've really grown at in the last few years?
Mastering the pause is like something that's really like something I've worked so hard to. I came from the radio background where you're wanting to fill in the void. So no matter what, just keep your mouth moving. Because sometimes your guests would come on and they would freeze up, and then you had to fill in that time.
Yeah.
So when I'm on stage, I still suffer from a little bit of that, like the silence PTSDs me. So I
Yeah.
start to panic a little bit, whenever I'm up there and there's silence. I feel like it needs to be filled. And
Mhm.
the pause and the use of the pause is an art form, and it's very much, you need it. You need to pace your audience too. You can't just keep blasting them. But like if you're doing 10 minutes, you can come at them for 10 minutes. But if you're doing 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, they need breaks in there. They need to be
Mhm.
pauses so they can catch their breath, so like that kind of thing. Working to slow my pacing down at stages so that you orchestrate the audience, as a general. You bring them up, you bring them back down, you bring them back up, that kind of thing,
Mhm.
instead of coming at them full bore all the time.
Right, right. And in mastering that, what has changed about knowing, the timing and how long to pause and things like that? Because I know that your jokes you get a laugh, but there's enough to them that you can get a second laugh just because the way you stand, the way you look, and also there's other stuff packed into that joke that, oh yeah, he said that too. And I'm the microwave one was the one really that really gets me, because there's really two laughs in there. One of them is the punchline about how many times you have to push it and all that kind of stuff, but the other one is just how stupid you look after after you say it. Like, I'm the biggest idiot in the world.
Well, ultimately, like if you break down 90% of my humor, ultimately in the butt of the joke. Like I
Yeah.
set myself up pretty good, throughout. But everything
Mhm.
I write, though, I write it in story arcs, because I don't do the traditional, as I don't do the traditional one-liners,
Right.
set up punchline, set up punchline, set up punchline.
Mm.
I'm in the storyteller genre, a Bert Kreischer, if you will.
Mhm.
One of these guys who uh, I tell the whole thing through stories, and I punch up my stories.
Mhm.
And so everything I think of when I write a set is done in arcs. And like the arc of single parenting, and then I might do relationships for a while, and then I might do, but like everything is supposed to, there's got to be a lot for me for the whole show, and it allows me to remember my set much easier too, because really
Mhm.
all I remember is what story arc I'm kind of going with.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like I'll do dating and then there's relationships, which is different material,
Right.
and but I the what helped me master that pause is the edible, the appropriate use of the edible. It did. Let me bring everything down like a little notch. So it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah.
The adrenaline wasn't coming all the time. So and legitimately, it was the appropriate use of the pre-show edible was what.
Yeah. I can tell you about an inappropriate use of a show I did down here, and it just kicked in too soon and too hard. So yeah, I
Oh yeah,
was
there's always that risk with the edibles.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to control than, say, like just smoking a joint before. But I smoked a joint too, just so we
Yeah.
were. Yeah.
Oh man. So I wanted to talk to you specifically because I just had something happen, and I'm not going to name names, but I approached somebody to be a guest, and they said, I will not be a guest because you had this person on. And the person I had on was a very, he was conservative. He's a conservative
Mhm.
guy, and he's either loved or hated, basically. And the person that I approached didn't like him and wouldn't be on my show because of it. Now, my show is not about politics. I don't talk about politics hardly at all. And if somebody wants to tell me, I mean, if they're a political humorist, we'll talk about that. But
Right.
my show is about comedy, and I'm never going to say that somebody can't be on, because I'm probably pretty close to as liberal as somebody my age can be, and way more
And let me
liberal
say,
than the
and let
guy.
me say, and let me say, Scott, God bless you for it too, for letting whoever come on.
Yeah. So are you starting to see this divide that is so much that somebody won't book somebody just because of their political leanings, and that even though it's not part of their act?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
it. I've seen it. I've heard it spoken. Um, myself as I don't do anything political in in anything I do, but I
Right.
was in the Navy, so it is perceived that I am the conservative, the conservative guy, even though it has nothing to do with my act and whatnot. And
Mm.
I've seen conversation exchange that have to do with not booking me because of my perceived politics, and
Mhm.
it's not even like my politics. It's what it's perceived to be. So yeah, I mean, there's that. But I go back to what I was saying earlier: is this thing? If this is something you want, nobody can stop you from doing it.
Mhm.
You know, that person can say they don't want to be on a show, or they're not going to help promote you, or they won't book you. That's fine. There's only 52 weekends in a year, and there's a million clubs and thousand. You know, go to the next club. You keep
Mhm.
working, you keep writing good material, and you keep entertaining crowds. Who was it? Who was it said? Was it Papa, or said make yourself undeniably good, and then
Yeah.
they can't deny you. So
Yeah.
that can be discouraging, that kind of stuff. But uh, you know, brush it off your shoulder, and move on. The vast majority of the people that you're dealing with are not going to help you or network for you or help you out in any way. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. That's really how it is, and I guess we had kind of a weird synergy up there in the Northern Indiana area, because we all did kind of help each other. It was it
it's a very friendly scene.
Yeah.
I've seen a bunch of different scenes at this point. I'll give a shout out to Grand Rapids, Michigan, is another really nice,
Yeah.
really friendly scene that you can. That's a real friendly place to go and start comedy in, and
Mhm.
the local comics there will be super helpful and
Mhm.
willing to work with you and book you and help you get better.
Shout
But
out to Demented
we did
Peach
have that.
Productions. Say what?
Demented Peach, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
with John Bench, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all good guys. I've had, Carl Sobel on the show,
Well,
and,
Silver
yeah,
and David
all
Stevies, and yeah.
yeah, all a bunch of good guys, and, it's really neat to see that, and I'm in a scene right now that it's not I don't think it's them, I think it's me, but I don't know if I wanna put the effort into getting to know a whole new bunch of people.
And here's the thing for those of you who are not familiar with the comedy scene, like, so a basic breakdown of the scene is, I'm finding, is that like a third of the people in the scene are intelligent, hardworking, great people that I definitely want to know, and I find comics to be exceptionally interesting people. Just they're
Mhm,
I mean, they're really some very strange to very witty. Just they're very
mhm,
interesting. Just a slew of people. But so that's about a third. And then there's a third that are just they're coming out there to open mics. That's all they're ever going to do. They enjoy doing that aspect, and
mhm,
they're the amateur league. And I like encouraging those guys. I like talking to those guys. And then you got a third that's absolute scum on earth, and they hide it well. So
yeah.
you just got to be aware that you are it's a shark infested waters, the comedy
Yeah.
world. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, it really is, and, going back to the politics stuff, I think sometimes they use that as an excuse, and, the guy I had on actually, he called me and he said, "You know who I am, right? And you know what I could possibly do to your show." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, you can't fuck it up any more than it already is." So so So, and I was a fan anyway. As long as a guy didn't like, pitchfork babies or something like that, then I'm cool with it.
I'm a comedy nerd, so I am a fan of a vast section of the genre. I like watching joke construction. I like watching, and one thing I like watching other comics when they come out with the new material, and then they it may not hit, and they take it
Mhm.
back and they polish it up, and then the next time I see them do it, it's a little different and it's a little
Yeah.
better. And I love seeing that process from a
Yeah.
transition to a new concept to a polished set.
Yeah.
And so it helps. It's comedy. Like, people are just so quick to get offended in anything anymore. Comedy's supposed to be that gray zone that you're allowed to talk about all those questionable areas of society, and you're supposed to be
Mhm.
able to just take it with a grain of salt. But we train ourselves to be offended because of the social media aspect, where we can ban people who don't agree with us, and then pretty soon the algorithm starts feeding you what you want to see. So then you
Yeah.
just surround yourself with yes men, so to speak, and then we
Yeah.
train ourselves, to where we're not used to the pushback, and then we have a hard time with the pushback. That's one
Yeah.
thing. Comedy will humble you real quick. Uh, yeah, you'll get some
Yeah.
pushback when you start.
Right. Now, you started a podcast with Jason and Rusty that I like so
Mhm.
much. It makes me feel like I'm back home every time I listen to it. So when you check your stats and you see that guy that's either in Huntsville or Birmingham or Tuscaloosa, wherever I'm at, that I
Right.
usually have that going. Light me at 5. Can you tell me a little bit about the podcast and why you do it and what you guys talk
Yeah.
about?
When I originally, when I originally started this, I was doing. We had a radio show called Coffee with Dean.
Yeah.
It was just a local show, and that's how I got into comedies. I wanted to have comics come on, and I wanted to interview them on there. And I found that having the 3-person setup was one of what is my favorite setup, where
Mhm.
myself and Rusty and then another comic, and then that type of interview atmosphere I found was the most fun. It was the easiest because there was always somebody to pick up conversation. And Rusty had, who's also my producer, he had an improv background. So,
Yeah.
so Jason had been on that show 3 or 4 times, and it
Mhm.
was always a really good time when he was on there. It
Mhm.
was always a new show. And Rusty and I had been talking about starting a podcast, and and really, Light Me at 5 is that's an industry term for when you get in the light. And I happen to like it with 5 minutes left. So I have a
Yeah.
4 minute ending bit, and that 5 minute light gives me a chance to transition to my bit. But
Okay.
it really is just it's Jason and I are both feature comics. So for those of you who are familiar with the features, the guy will come out, or the female will come out and do the half hour before headliner.
Mhm.
That's really where we're at in our careers. And so we started the podcast to kind of just follow us as we experience. We may never make it anywhere in comedy. We've already made it a lot farther than we ever expected to.
Mhm.
This last year, 2021, was interesting. I met Leno. I did a show with Arsenio Hall out in
Mhm.
Flappers. We've met Steve Ranazizi. Just opened for him. I met Jeff
Mhm.
Richards. So like it was an interesting run, 2021. So yeah, man, check us out. Like Me at 5 anywhere you get your podcasts, and just kind of follow Jason LaFoon and I as we trudge our way the long journey up the comedy
Yeah.
ladder, and hopefully we take us some places.
Yeah, so I was trying to decide if I only liked it because I know you guys and I
Right,
know
right.
some of the inside
I was
jokes,
actually
or if
going to
I
say
liked it
something
because
about
it was
that.
a
Right.
good podcast. And I think I like it because it's a good podcast. And
Uh,
I'll never know, but
right, right.
I really think it's because I'm I'm usually anti shooting the shit type podcasts. I have never listened to Joe Rogan. I
Right,
and it doesn't have anything to do with what he said. It's just not my type of
right,
thing. And,
right.
and yet you guys for some reason are able to turn it around. And I think Rusty is actually the magic there because he doesn't talk as much, but when he says something, it's totally fucking hilarious and it brings everything together and it's just great. So
He's pulling the strings.
Yeah, you need Rusty and try to keep him healthy because if it's just you and Jason, it's gonna suck.
Well, it'd be better for us if we can get more shows. That's the thing. As long as we're booking, we've got so it'll be half. Yeah, you're right, because we'll be half of we're talking about what shows we're doing and kind of stuff that happened at the clubs, and
Yeah.
then a lot of it's shooting the shit. The God's honest truth, 90% of the comedy podcasts out there is you're trying to capture, and you're familiar with these. It's the behind the scenes conversations when you've got all the comics sitting there,
Mhm.
and whether it be the open mics or whether it be the shows, but that behind the scenes group when all the comics in there shooting the shit,
Mhm.
that is what you're trying to capture for these podcasts,
Yeah.
because that is some of the funniest, most interesting conversations you'll ever
Mhm.
hear from some of the most unique individuals, and all of them who are somewhat aspect of funny, or they wouldn't be doing this thing,
Right.
and
Right.
having just natural conversations amongst themselves. That's ultimately what we're trying to capture in every single podcast
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah, you guys
So
you do it well.
we try.
You
Thank you, though. Thank you.
and you wouldn't suck if it was just you and Jason. It would be okay. I do have to ask, it's kind of a cliffhanger. I haven't found out yet. How was the black weed that Jason got you?
Oh, it was pretty good. It was. Jason was right. It looked a lot more deadly than it was.
Okay.
But it was I'd never seen anything quite that distinct of color all the way through. Almost
Yeah.
like it had rotted and died, and then he brought it to me, but it didn't smell bad at all.
Yeah.
It was rough.
Oh,
I
that's
got the
great.
new job. I have this new job where I'm working 12-hour days, but it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Oh, okay.
So, and then so when I first got the thing, my girlfriend was like, "You're not gonna like that job because it's over the weekend, and you book, your shows are over the weekend." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," but I don't have shows every weekend. You know, I wish I
Mhm.
did, but I don't have shows every weekend. I was like, "But I have practice like every fucking week and shit, and I'm off the rest of those weeks." So
Mhm.
ever since I started this job, I have booked every goddamn weekend.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so now we're going like we're going like I don't know, 14 or 15 weekends straight now. So it's been a good luck charm. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
But I'm running myself into the dirt. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. Yeah, I know how that feels. Now, you've been doing this long enough to, I guess, have some low points. Have you ever had any points where you said, "Yeah, this isn't worth it. I'm just gonna quit"?
Well, yeah, if you let them. Like something about stand up. What's weird is man, because you wrote the material, and even though you're exaggerating and some of the stories are just outright not true, there's like
Mhm.
nuggets of truth, and there's pieces of you in every single one of them.
Mhm.
Some
Yeah.
stories are way more true than others, and you'll never get a like a lot of times you won't get us to tell that, because it like that's part of the magician's trick, right?
Right.
That's the behind the scenes shit that makes the magic. But uh man, so when your stuff doesn't work, it's feels like it's personal. Like it
Yeah.
feels like you're
Yeah.
reading your diary to people and then they just booed you. That's what it feels like
Yeah.
inside. Like we've all had those nights where you're leaving and you're just like, Jesus fucking Christ. I worked all day, and then I drove, 2.5 hours after work in a
Mhm.
snowstorm to get up here to catch 30 minutes of sleep in the car before I go up for 7 minutes of a crowd of 13 people who I've just interrupted their dinner,
Yeah.
because it's like a bar show or something where it's not a traditional comedy venue. But
Mhm.
as an up and coming comic, you're trying to get on every stage you can, and you may have made $15, you may have made nothing,
Mhm.
and nobody laughed, and then you're driving home and you're just like, I'm just gonna drive off the bridge here, like what's the point? Like I'm the worst comic on the planet, but you get home, and by the time you get home, that 2.5 hour drive, you're like, but this I got this punchline here, and like, what if I'd have done this? And maybe
Mhm.
I should have done this part because that little girl was sitting right there at the table. And, you know what I mean? Like you start doing that and start figuring out. And I mean, you work it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I ask everybody on the show, well, almost everybody, is what do you know now that you wish you would have known when you started?
Now I can honestly say I have been uh I haven't made a lot of stupid mistakes simply because uh I come at it for a later point in life, right?
Mhm,
So, I've done the corporate things, or you don't get drunk at the business retreat kind of thing. But one thing I'll tell you what, one thing I wish I was more comfortable with right off the bat is someone new coming in. Do not be afraid to do that 5 minutes of material that you got that first time you came out. Do it the
mhm,
second time you come out. Do it the third time. Do it the fourth time. Do it the fifth. Don't feel pressure to change up your material because other comics around you who've been doing this a lot longer and have a lot more material might be coming up each week and throwing up new material. They're not throwing up new material, they're throwing up material, they're just working on material throughout their catalog.
mhm,
Uh, I see so many new comics that come up with a good concept and they'll work and they'll get laughs that first time because they're new and people will tend to be a little nicer to them. And
mhm,
then they want to change up. The next week they want to come up with something different. It doesn't get the laughs. Then they get kind of discouraged. They want to come up with something different instead of just working that first 5 minutes until they get it right.
mhm.
That's the advice I would give. Like club owners are like they're not. A club owner doesn't expect a new open micer to come in with a new material. That's not what they're expecting. They're looking to see this polished delivery, stage presence, timing, and that's the only way you guys just repetitive.
Yeah,
You got to repetitively get on stage.
mhm,
So
I
that's what I would
agree.
tell somebody. Don't feel the pressure to have new material every week.
Mhm,
Just work on that material you have.
yeah. Well, and you can write it, but you don't have to perform it. You gotta
Right.
get the first stuff right
Get your
first.
first stuff
You
down
gotta
right.
and not necessarily right, but to a point where you feel comfortable enough and you're getting enough laughs throughout that 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. So, I saw your new website. I love the new website. So let's tell people where people can find Dean Jernigan.
Dean's Jernigan comedy.com is the website. I don't have a calendar on it yet, though. Someone asked, I'm saying, you need to get a calendar on there. I said, well, I'll get a calendar on there when I have enough dates to fill up the calendar. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless to have a calendar on there.
Well, you know what I
But
do? I go to every comedian's website before I interview them, and 80% of them, the calendar is still 2021. It's still the
really,
2021 dates.
well, there's a trick too in the industry that I've been keyed into now. I feel like I'm talking out of school. It's just between us girls. Is like you're filling in fake dates on the dates you're not full anyway, so it appears that you're working.
Okay,
And
so
then and then
you're at, Luby's Comedy Club in
yeah,
Canada
yeah,
or something
you're
like
just
that.
filling in. You're just being like booked or Louisville to be
Yeah,
announced, that kind of thing.
yeah,
You just fill it in the weekends you're not working, so it looks like you're busier, so that the booker doesn't go, well, why isn't anybody else booking them?
yeah,
It's a ridiculous game we play. Unlike like you go get a job somewhere else though, and you got a job, you do the interview, you're in there. With this
yeah,
thing, we got to do the interview every fucking club we go to. Then
yeah,
you got to nose your way into the next one and nose your way into the next one until eventually you become well known enough that your name precedes you.
yeah.
And then then these casting couch calls that I keep going to are going to end.
Finally paying off, finally.
My time in the Navy has really helped me out in this early stages of my career.
Oh, that's great. Well, I tell you, Dean, it's first of all, it's great to catch up, and second, I really do admire the work that you put in, and the fact you're just a true blue friend. I mean, you are good to people, and people, people like you, but it's not just skin deep. I mean, you're gregarious, you're nice and stuff like that, but you really are a good guy. And I really hope that everything happens for you that you want to happen.
Well, I appreciate it. I really do. I figured I started this whole comedy thing late. I have a chance to come in it on the backside of life, and one of my big things early on is from day one was if I only feed good karma into this comedy thing, then maybe all I can, you know what I mean? Then maybe the only thing
Mhm.
I'll ever get out of it's good karma. So I've
Yeah.
really stuck to my guns with that. And, you know, I avoid shit talking.
Yeah.
And, even though some places and some comics deserve it, you
Yeah,
know,
it's
we
hard.
avoid it. We let them roll off our backs. And like you had issues with the one, I won't come on your show because you allowed somebody else to come on your show. All right, well, thanks for your time because you don't
Yeah.
dictate who gets to speak in this country,
Right,
you know,
right.
and let
Yeah.
them come on. And if they do a good job, great. If they do a bad job, that's on them, you know,
Yeah.
let them come
Well,
on.
and the
You
thing is they lost their forum to state their case. They could come on and tell me how shitty I am for having that person on the show, and
Absolutely.
I would let
Absolutely.
them. Yeah. Yeah, but, it is what it is, and, it doesn't bother me, but, I just hope it doesn't become a trend because I've got another really conservative guy lined up, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it is what it is. You keep trucking. That's why I tell somebody else. I go, Spotify hasn't silenced me either.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. It's
Absolutely.
great to see you again.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thanks for having me.